Hello, and welcome to the 26th Annual Vermont Grazing and Livestock Conference. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, to bring special attention to the National Grazing Lands Coalition, Food Animal Concerns Trust, Morrison's Custom Feeds, Rural Vermont, and the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food, and Markets. Please visit all of our sponsors' virtual booths for more information about their work. I'd also like to thank our partners. They help make our work possible throughout the year. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture, United States Department of Agriculture, Cedar Tree Foundation, and the Forrest C. and Francis H. Latner Foundation. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about how to use Whova to improve your conference experience. During the sessions, we will take Q&A from the audience. You will submit your Q&A questions under the Q&A tab to the right of the session recording. If you blow the session recording up to full screen, you will lose the tabs to your right. So just remember that you'll have to minimize them, the screen, when you have a question in order to put your question in the Q&A tab. You can also see other attendees' questions. This allows the upvoting of questions to increase the likelihood that they will get asked and answered. There is a chat tab here. This is for you and other attendees to share your wisdom. We will also use it to post resources from the presentations. And you will also find the live captioning link here in the chat tab. For the live captioning of each session, you will cut and paste that link into a new browser window. Please use Google Chrome as your browser. There's also a polls tab and a community board tab. The polls tab will help you provide feedback to the presenters. And the community board will allow you to connect with other attendees. There are a number of networking features within Whova that helps you connect to other attendees. One new feature is the speed networking sessions. We will be hosting one speed networking session on the 22nd from 11:30 to 12:30. This is an opportunity for farmers to sit together and chat at a virtual table. Every 10 minutes, you will be shuffled to a new virtual table, but you'll have a chance to introduce yourself and say hello to new and old friends. You can also email, text, or video call other attendees. You can do this for the next 6 months. For the next 6 months, you can host a virtual meetup or create a discussion group on topics of your choice. Again, please use Google Chrome as your browser, and you have this capability for the next 6 months. Did I mention that you can host a virtual meetup or start a topic discussion group? So this is under your community tab on the left. And there are a number of features where you can start to network with people who have similar questions to your questions. Thank you for participating and spending the time with us for the 26th Annual Vermont Grazing and Livestock Conference. I hope you enjoy the content.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for Healing the Land Community with Abe Collins. So I am going to turn this over to Abe. He's got slides to go through. I'm just reminding folks, if you expand your view of Whova to take up your whole view shed while you're on your computer, you'll have to go back to minimizing it to being able to put questions in the Q&A question box. So you may want to expand it so that you can see his slides better, but then you're going to have to make it smaller so you can put questions in. We're trying to keep everybody as much as possible I know there are some people who are only in Zoom, but to keep your questions out in the Q&A session, because it allows people to upvote those questions. So it's most likely that those questions will get answered. And B, it saves them. So if there are questions that we don't get to, then Abe can go back in and answer those questions for you. So as much as possible, if people can remember, and there's also chat that's out in Whova, again, that saves that. So try to use that chat feature out in Whova. Now, without further ado, welcome Abe, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Megan. Good to be here. I looked over the other people in the room, virtual room with us, and I know a whole bunch of you, so I won't spend too much time introducing myself other than say I am a grazer, longtime grazer, and I help people try to figure out how to heal land. As of late, the outfits I'm involved with are Collins Grazing, Landstream, and the Land Care Cooperative. Yeah, so this talk is healing the land community, and we'll get into definitions and emergent patterns and useful constraints. So as my teacher, Aldo Leopold, once said, we abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. And when we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. I'll be often referring to the land community, and it's in the Leopoldian sense, as defined quite well in the final chapter of a Sand County Almanac. I want to make an assertion here that it's time to cooperate to heal the land community. A lot of what I say moving forward is going to be presented as hypotheses that we aim to test in coming years. But on this one, I think this is just a firm statement of belief. Leopold says that land is a community is the basic concept of ecology, but that land is to be loved and respected is an extension of ethics. A land ethic changes the role of Homo sapiens from conqueror of the land community to plain member and citizen of it. So here are some overviews of patterns for healing the land community that I've come across in all my years of working with other people to do just this. And this land community includes us and the animals and the plants and the microbes. One is turning to cooperativism to heal the land community. And cooperativism has a long, strong tradition, and especially in agriculture. And I think that the return to cooperativism, we're seeing a real resurgence around the world of cooperatives, of businesses owned by the people who work in them and who use their services. Very powerful concept. Democracy in the workplace, economic democracy. Why? To care for our community, to grow a deep topsoil legacy for future generations. To care for pollinators, to plant billions and billions of flowers, deep-rooted ones, to heal the land community. To trigger beneficial self-amplifying feedback loops in the land community. Now I'm going to return to a lot of these points. This one not as much perhaps, so I'll explain it in a quick minute. To give you an example of initiating a self-amplifying feedback loop in the biological community. And I discovered this a long time ago when I started grazing in the norm. Well, I started grazing on a dairy farm in St. Albans, Vermont. The norm back then was to graze 4 to 8 inch grass down to 1 to 2 inches and repeat. And we thought about it. We said, well, why don't we leave a whole bunch of grass instead? And we'll still harvest some, but we'll just leave more for litter. Because there were issues. There wasn't much litter on the ground, and there weren't any earthworms, and there wasn't much biological activity on the surface. So we left a lot more grass, and that fed a lot more worms and a lot more springtails and mites and everybody else. And that resulted in aeration of the soil and more water soaking in and less evaporation, which grew more grass, which grew more milk, which grew more earthworms, which was self-amplifying. So we just did a small thing. We started leaving more grass, both trampled and as residual, and pop, it grew on itself. So that's an example of what I'm talking about there. And there are all kinds of opportunities that produce nonlinear benefits to us, and we should take advantage of them wherever possible. Patterns for healing the land community. Build and evolve working paradigms, processes, and systems and shed failed and or extractive paradigms and systems. Standing up our science. And what I mean by our science, I'll touch on that in this workshop. But what I mean is landscape feedback science for the land community rather than a lot of science that we're surrounded by now, which is basically statistical prediction from academics and policymakers and corporations that are predicting our behavior or trying to control our behavior. So continued that we can operate community learning systems to heal the land community, ones that we control that serve our purposes. Education and research that serve us, where we are co-researchers, not the research. It goes from being object to being subjects, agents in history, if you will. Data cooperativism is a concept I will touch briefly on again, but if you haven't heard the term, I hadn't either before we started using it, and we're developing it. And what it means is pretty self-explanatory, that we are a cooperative that generates and controls and adds value to our own data. And because of that, we have intellectual property rights to our data. Novel finding, if you don't aggregate and add value to data, there is no legal basis for owning that data or for having property rights to it. Little known fact, but worth thinking about if you are being asked for your data, for anything, agencies, companies, researchers, anything. A pattern is organizing ourselves, us as land stewards, and hiring out our services to heal the land community rather than being aggregating ourselves. So if you're signing up acres or your farm and getting a payment, like Indigo Agriculture just launched their first rounds of payments for carbon credits. And that's checks were just written, $3 per acre. There's a big reaction going around about that around the country. Evolve localized economic democracy and reclaim the credit commons to hire stewards to heal the land. What is the credit commons? We'll touch on it. Practicing neighborly economics. Again, we'll expand. So going from there is to point out that land then, in Aldo Leopold's words, land then is not merely soil, it's a fountain of energy flowing through a circuit of soils, plants, and animals. That goes without saying, but the land community is powered by sunlight energy. And a question I've asked myself for a long time is how can we carry ourselves, conduct ourselves, position ourselves, in Bud Williams' language, to help harvest, store, and release solar energy to heal the land community. The visible light of the rainbow, that's what grows plants. And that's what turns electromagnetic energy into chemically stored energy. And when we consume it, it's turned back into electrical energy, powering our muscles and our brains. Pretty amazing system that we live in. I want to use an example here and say that healing is a lot of work. And why the heck would I use a diagram of engine to say that it's a lot of work? Well, energy can be, work can be thought of as constrained energy. And an example here is if you just burn some gasoline in an open pan, it would just poof and do nothing but create low-grade heat without much benefit to us. But if we put it in a piston with a cylinder, a piston in a cylinder, and combust it, it's constrained. And it's that constraint that makes that expenditure of energy do useful work. And it's the same with sunlight and the systems that sunlight energy flows through after it's been turned into sugar by plants. So I want to say that this is a metaphor, and we got to remember not to get too stuck on metaphors, because we use metaphors when ideas are too big for our little brains, mine included, absolutely. To understand something, we think in metaphors. The problem is when we confuse the map for the territory and start thinking that the metaphor is the territory, that the map is the territory. So energy is this ability to do work, a constrained release of energy, physical definitions, including force times distance, and a measure of the energy expended in applying force to move an object. Leopold again says that land as a community is the basic concept of ecology, but that land is to be loved and respected is an extension of ethics. An ethic, ecologically, is a limitation on freedom of action in the struggle for existence. And I want to suggest that constraints, not being able to do anything we darn well please in the universe, is part of freedom and part of community. It's responsibility, and it's actually the joy and happiness and what makes life good, are to follow rules like the rules of nature. These are constraints, but they are constraints that we can use to our benefit in healing the land community. So thinking about a few of them. One, it obviously healing the land community is going to depend on photosynthetic solar energy harvest. And then that energy flowing through beneficial pathways, such as all of biodiversity in food webs, consuming that original sugar energy. Healing is an emergent property. And what that means is you can't just take a silver bullet and throw it at somebody or something that's wounded or hurt and expect it to be fixed. It's the whole system, all the way to the nearby star that we're going around, throwing energy at us. If we have a simplified or maladapted system, you'll have no healing. Even if you throw 10 best management practices at it, if the system itself is dysfunctional. We need massive diversity in order to heal land. And I'll touch on massive diversity. To care for the whole land community, we got to start practicing neighborliness. And if we're already doing it, maybe doing it more. And to take care of our neighbors is ultimately to take care of ourselves, especially in this day and age. A constraint is that energy and matter are conserved, and we need to obey the laws of thermodynamics in our science, in our management, and so forth, and quit pretending that we don't have to, as if infinite material growth is possible, or that we can do a phosphorus balance without also knowing where the energy and the water have gone. You can't. No complex system can function without feedback. And if you don't have feedback, the system that you're trying to operate within will break. Quit working. Couple more complex terms, but I'm getting towards the fun stuff. Dissipative systems, evolving them. A dissipative system is a thermodynamically open system which is operating out of and often far from thermodynamic equilibrium in an environment with which it exchanges energy and matter. Whirlpools, cells, a farm, a society, an organization. These are all examples of dissipative systems, and they're really a fundamental unit of evolution, organisms included. When we're trying to build these dissipative systems, we want to model them on nature. That energy is flowing through them, matter is flowing through them, they have to have the feedback loops. And to give you an example of a dissipative system or structure that we're working on right now, we've created the Land Care Cooperative. Myself and an amazing team of other human beings, cooperators, farmers and non-farmers alike, but all of them I'd say are land stewards. And the purpose of this new cooperative is cooperatively healing the land community, practicing economic democracy together. So I'm going to touch real quick on what I think a lot of people expect from me often. That's to be useful, helpful with land management, but this is very simple and quick. And these are constraints, but they have to do with constraints on land management when you're out in the field, when you're the farmer. The first one, of course, is to graze well. The second is to increase plant density and diversity and time and space and lengthen the growing season and the rate of plant growth if we can. There are numerous ways to do all of these things. Attend to the health of the whole system at all times, never just paying attention to one thing. Anyone says we must just, manage for maximized yield. That's kind of been a train wreck in the history of agricultural production. And frankly, we're surrounded by it today with you must just optimize for carbon sequestration or one aspect at a time. That's the wrong way to manage holistically. The health of the whole system, we will be encouraging massive diversity, mineral availability to plants and animals. If our soils are compacted, we're going to figure out how to decompact them. We're going to increase the energy density in high energy forages. We're going to increase rooting depth and density. We're going to leave more than half. Simple enough, but not the norm in agricultural production for a long time. This process of healing land, we're going to have to leave a lot of photosynthate, of biomass, to feed the organisms that are part of the whole system, to feed our other livestock. And triggering plant defoliation resistance mechanisms means understanding the plant physiology enough so that when, for example, we graze them, we're causing that plant to grow more of itself easily and more productively than if we hadn't grazed them in the first place. But that takes some very detailed knowledge. And absolutely fundamentally addressing pollinator welfare factors and decimating factors, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes. Taking care of the pollinators. There's no choice left. We have to do it. And it's a joyful responsibility. So healing is an emergent property of complex whole systems. What does that mean? For example, a best management practice Band-Aid on a dead man heals no wound. We have to have whole, healthy, functioning systems. Looking back over the last 80 or so years of trying to address the ravages of soil erosion in the United States and realizing that soil loss today is probably about 10 times greater than soil formation, we realize that you can't just throw a handful of practices or subsidies or regulations at a problem and expect it's going to fix if the larger system is broken. So healing is an emergent property of complex whole systems that are working. And we're going to model those systems, if we're building them or shepherding them, on natural systems, because billions of years worth of R&D, it's hard to beat that. Jumping to massive diversity, I'm fine with this being kind of catchphrasey sounding. It's just so much fun to think about it and to do it. And that is planting far more diversity than we ever thought was reasonable. It takes a lot of work, but we want massive diversity for a whole bunch of reasons which I'll turn to. I would point out, though, that every one of us knows that a corn monoculture is a terrible way to heal land or to grow topsoil. That lack of diversity ripples through to the microbial diversity, to large, long periods of bare ground often, et cetera. But knowing that, a lot of us went to duocultures from monocultures. And the question has to be asked, looking back, were those duocultures enough? Are there thresholds that two plant families weren't enough to cross? And the answer is, yeah, probably. As a working hypothesis, everything points to duocultures are not enough. Planting a grass and a legume, or 5 grasses and 5 legumes, is not enough. We'll get to that. So massive diversity means starting to work with all these different plant families that may seem alien to us at first, and yet there's real benefit. And of course, a lot of them really are flowering, deep taprooted forbs, what are called weeds. So why massive diversity? This is Matt Schwanier's hand on a very young radish root, actually. And you can see the soil sticking to it. And that soil, the beautiful thing going on here is that soil formation, if you can see soil sticking to the roots, soil formation is in process. That plant is feeding sugar, exudates, out through the root system to microbes, and they're producing glues, and they're aggregating soil. And that aggregation process is the process of soil formation. What's really interesting about this picture to me is that the soil was so dry when this photo was taken. You can see the bottom, the soil is just dusty and tan colored. It's because it was powder dry down there. But the plant was actually using the little bit of moisture in the very top soil that where it rained recently, and it's making sugars, and then it's exuding that sugar-rich sap down low where those organisms, microorganisms, even there is no available soil moisture, it's just dust in your hands, those soil organisms are using that sap to aggregate, to glue together that dust. It's a beautiful example of the way that life, anyway, I disagree with the phraseology of building soil. I've built houses in my life, but I've never built soil. I've been there while plants were growing and did my best not to get in the way. And similarly, I feel the same way with growing soil. So why massive diversity? We want to effectively harvest solar energy. We want to effectively host microbial diversity. This quorum signaling thing we should really expand on in the near future. But quorum signaling is density-dependent collaborative behavior in microbes. And what that means is we got to get to a certain level of diversity and a certain amount of the organisms, both numbers and diversity of them, before collective behaviors start happening, genes start getting switched on. And things that are beyond our current expectations, for those of us who are used to simplified monocultures or duocultures, once you get to a certain level of diversity, crazy stuff starts happening, like massive production, massive soil formation, hormones and enzymes and available minerals to animals that weren't before, not having to use fertilizer. These things start to happen with this quorum signaling. So getting to diversity actually has all these additional benefits. Fat livestock, soil formation, deep roots, water storage, drought proofing, accessing minerals, feeding pollinators. And just to point out that the modern scientific findings on this that are so empowering are deeply validating of a lot of what was discovered by the English lay farmers like Newman Turner, Sir Robert Eliot, William Layman, Friend Sykes, and many others in England, who basically came up with the herbal lays, L-E-Y-S, which are temporary 4-year or forb-dominated pasture systems with good grazing, and a lot of them use subsoiling and so forth. But it's deeply validating. And if you go back to fertility farming and fertility pastures, Friend Sykes' Humus and the Farmer, and the Clifton Park System of Farming, these are amazing books that actually, they got it right. They didn't know all the scientific details, but they got it right based on their land-based powers of observation. So here we go to planting at least 5 families. For example, Asteraceae, that's sunflower, that's chicory, that's dandelion. Plantagenaceae, that's plantain. Rosaceae, that's rose or burnet, or strawberry for that matter, but burnet's a really nice option. Poaceae, of course, is grass, and leguminae are your legumes. Interestingly, what is being found is if you get enough diversity, you don't need legumes for fully adequate nitrogen fixation. That should blow your mind. And I recommend deeply that everyone go to the Green Cover YouTube channel and watch Christine Jones. She has 5 talks on this, and they are amazing. Christine Jones has absolutely put together, synthesized so much research and work and put it together in some deeply empowering information. That's 1-hour videos. Watch them while you're doing the dishes or whatever. Planting at least 5 families, though, is the threshold we want to cross. We're much less dependent on legumes. And I'll give you one example that for me helps me to think about it. It's like no legumes, like Christine has found, you need no legumes and you can get completely adequate N fixation. Like no legumes, nothing will grow. You know, wherever I've seen no legumes, the system isn't productive. Go and look in the forest and tell me what legumes you see there. There are a few, not many though. And those systems produce quite a lot of biomass, often in deeply degraded soils when we cut down the trees and got rid of all the soil here in Vermont. They've grown back. But yeah, there are many legumes in forests, and they have and it's because once you have aggregated soil, then the microsites that are low in oxygen are inside of aggregates. And that's where the microbes produce the nitrogenase, the critical enzyme needed to fix atmospheric nitrogen. So this summer I just had an incredible adventure with some amazing farmers in Vermont. And that is that we were rip sowing massive forb diversity. We were using this subsoiler. We used it all summer long from Andre and Adam Vorsteveld. We rebuilt it. It was kind of beat up, but this is one that Eric Noel and I had built and used for years together. And we used it, and it has a seeder and it has a liquid injector, and we made all these fancy lactobacillus-based brews, and we planted crazy diverse forb seed mixes up and down the state. We called it the Eric Noel Key Lime Pit Crew, and many of you know my old good friend Eric, and he died of colon cancer in December of 2018. But he and I did so much discovery with this machine together, really learned a lot about growing soil and turning clay into topsoil and planting different mixes. Miss this guy. But anyway, we called it the Eric Noel Key Lime Pit Crew because he was a race car mechanic. And he worked in the pit crew. And, you know, the competence of, you know, everything's happening real fast. People know what they're doing. Car pulls in, pulls out. That's kind of how we thought of ourselves. So you can see here these rows of chicory and plantain and burnet and all these beautiful things heading right down the field, right? And what we saw was profound, where compacted clay, just in a matter of a couple months, was combobulated. That's not a real world, but it was combobulated into aggregated porous soil, roots everywhere. The earthworm numbers exploded. This is the beginning of a process. I know there's been research done in Vermont that's proved that key lime doesn't work, yada yada. I don't believe in the science or the management that attended that research. We were just getting started, but what just happened in a short time, where we were addressing minerals, addressing microbial inoculants, addressing plant diversity, was profound and really stunning and meaningful to those of us involved. Not to mention, no more runoff where we did this, all the water goes in. So here we had all kinds of stuff. You can see seed and liquid inoculant pumping in. It was a little wet. It had gone through a wet spot on that. We don't normally mud in. You can see Rachel and her boy Cal there, and Cheryl, her daughter there, and Mark and Cheryl using the penetrometer looking in. And the Larsons with a beautiful 5-acre high diversity forb-based mix they planted. That's going to be beautiful next year. Of course, we got no flowers in the first year, but what these are giant wildflower patches. And we had a lot of wildflowers in these mixes, including echinacea and other plants that animals are going to be self-medicating. We're in trouble. And that is that there is an insect apocalypse. We can argue about the details, but by and large, wherever research has been done in the last 20, 30 years, we're talking about 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% decreases in insect biomass. And these critters, insects and other pollinators, birds, bats, we have, white nose disease here, but our numbers are plummeting, and we are dependent on these, not just for this or that fruit or, a huge amount of our food like crops, but really for the functioning of the whole system. We need to turn around the insect apocalypse. It's a land community healing priority. And I think that it precedes any stuff about, sequestering carbon. There is no sequestration of carbon. Carbon only exists in cycle. But the number one priority is we need to take care of the pollinators. How are we going to do this? Well, the first thing as communities, as just a basic security, is plant billions and billions of flowers, all of us together. That's food. It's also part of habitat. And part of habitat is you leave litter. Most of these, a lot of insects, they need litter. They like litter. They like residual and litter and hollow stems and tubes and rotting duff. These are the things that they get through the winter. Plant billions and billions of flowers. Part of our land care cooperative, one of our many overlapping endeavors is something that we call Bloom Train. My daughter Margot and I developed this over a decade ago, thinking about insect extinction, walking the land. And what this is community-wide holistic management for pollinator health. It's a sequenced multi-part campaign that includes engaging our entire communities. We have a fascinating partnership right now with a healthcare center that has been buying seeds, in effect hiring farmers to plant seeds, because this healthcare center recognizes that the total health of their community depends on huge amounts of flowers feeding pollinators. Cooperative seed purchasing, we just brokered an awesome deal the other day, incredible deals. We wanted to plant $100,000 worth of massive forb diversity this year. Right now we're at 10,000. We want to just keep going up. We got plans, we'll see how far we get, but we got farmers ready to plant it. We want a lot more. Everyone is invited soon. We just have to grow this one step at a time. So we do not mean to be exclusive. We're just growing this one step at a time. We'll be inviting everybody in as quickly as we can. Community software is sort of like Pokemon Go for pollinators, except it's not a data mining tool. So it's citizen science and people reporting where there are bloom gaps and then doing the work together to plant the flowers to fill the bloom gaps. So we're excited about Bloom Train. We think it's really a beautiful thing. And the thing that I want to share in this slide ahead is where I learned this all again. I know Aldo Leopold dominates this because he's been so influential for me. But his book, Game Management, taught me more about growing soil than almost any other book I've ever read. And in that, he developed a system, a way of looking at the land and organisms within it and taking care of it. And they were trying to take care of game birds because they were often overhunted. Y'all know that we, made the passenger pigeon and many others go extinct. The turkeys were near extinct, for example. But what you do if you want to take care of a population is you take care of the welfare factors, you increase them, and you decrease the decimating factors. The welfare factors are food, cover, and water. Decimating factors, of course, are poison, accidents, starvation, predators, hunting, fire. Take care of food, cover, and water, though. That's a starting point. If those aren't there, you're not going to have your game birds or your insects, as the case may be. What I learned with this, by studying history and ecology and also by farming, is one good example is that it's estimated that there were 10 million wild turkeys on Turtle Island when Europeans showed up. So before 1500. 1948, they were almost gone. We were down to like 130,000. Today, they're at 7 million. And a big part of that, they're multi-factor, but a big part of that was that Aldo Leopold's game management principles were used in agency game management. And you can see turkeys everywhere today. I found this when I told you about that instance of starting to leave more residual in the old short grass grazing paradigm, and then we changed that up, is that the earthworms came back so fast my head spun. There were no earthworm castings on the surface when we started, and by the end of the year there wasn't an inch of the farm that wasn't covered, because all of a sudden we created a whole new habitat of litter on the surface. We take care of the welfare factors, we decrease the decimating factors, and the organisms return. We're also taking care of the whole system. So I want to offer that this is an amazing opportunity to not wring our hands and cry in our sleeves about, oh, the insects are disappearing. It's a catastrophe. It is a catastrophe, and we can do something about it. And we're choosing to do something about it now, and things happen fast when you address the welfare factors and decrease the decimating factors, like poisons, like neonics. I'll unabashedly say that no more neonics, just neonicotinoid insecticides, just as an example. So another thing that we're working on, and I believe deeply in the need for this to heal our land, is our own learning systems, and we're building our own data cooperative. I'm not going to go into this complex diagram other than to say this is a combination of detailed measurement, measurement synthesis, and feedback to land managers. And the land managers' observations and records are fundamental to the whole system. So we call this, just a shorthanded, our science. It's landscape feedback to help stewards and whole communities heal the land. Accurate real-time measurement of landscape function, what's happening to the energy, the water, the plant, the soils, the organisms. We can measure all this in a scalable way, and that's what we're building. And it's a land steward-driven management learning system. A critical insight from Norbert Wiener is that feedback is required for the regulation of a system on the basis of its actual performance rather than its expected performance. If you're statistically predicting the outcome of best management practices, that's not a feedback system. That's a prediction system. You cannot, and this is the father of cybernetics. He's kind of an authority on the matter. So expanding on this a little bit about what our science is. It's landscape feedback of, by, and for the land community. It's like a three-legged stool, with one leg being farmers' observations, judgments, and management records. Another one being near-surface environmental measurements. And the third one being satellite remote sensing. That's integrated in something we call measurement synthesis, which really can't be boiled down to any equivalent to most of the modeling we see today, which is just statistical prediction of expected environmental outcomes based on which practices are implemented. It's not that. Unrelated, not the same. Not to be compared, let's not confuse or waste time on that. What we do with measurement synthesis is it tells us what's happening with the energy, the water, the soil, the plant growth. And then we feed that information back to the farmers so that their intuition their intuition eventually becomes faster and better than the measurement synthesis. But we're retraining ourselves to see energy flows and water flow, water cycling, and biomass, and know how many pounds of biomass are standing out in front of us, etc. So in this quantified landscape function for feedback process, and this measurement synthesis, we're taking measurements of radiation, weather, vegetation, soil, and water, combining them with the measurements and the observations, the records of the farmers, and doing this synthesis process, creating the energy and water budgets, elements of the carbon budgets, but it's not closed because that's a practical impossibility, but we can calculate an estimate, and tracking biomass. And what we're getting out of all this is, in a sense, an ongoing simulation of the entire land system that's very equivalent to a weather forecast, this measurement synthesis process. In meteorology, that's called data assimilation. That's where all the measurements are constantly being taken, and you're able to kind of roughly simulate the system and forecast maybe a week or two in advance. That's what we're talking about. So the management are records, for example, grazing, cropping, spreading, harvest, burning, forestry, everything. And this is recorded, and this is part of the data cooperative concept. Again, if someone's coming to you and asking for your data, and you are not the one aggregating it with others and improving it, you will never have intellectual property rights to it. You'll never be able to own it. You may have privacy rights, But this is critical in the time when data is the new oil, to speak in cliches. If you do not aggregate and add the value and analyze it yourself with others, you won't have any property rights to it. Tracking biomass is a software we call LandWeb, and this tracks how much grass is in every paddock, but it's a piece of the puzzle because it's also tracking energy and water and soil properties and all that. But it's a very important piece, and we'll be working a lot on that this year. And we're tracking, of course, the energy and the water moving through the entire system, which are really the fundamental first order variables of understanding how landscapes are working. You don't get to claim that you know where the nitrogen and the phosphorus, or the carbon for that matter, are going if you don't accurately know where the energy and the water are going. Remember that, and if someone tells you otherwise, we're talking about apples and oranges. A mobile ground truthing crew is another part of what we'll have going this growing season, and that's where we're out measuring grass, basically measuring saturated hydraulic conductivity, leaf area index, NDVI, green chlorophyll index, all these things that what we're measuring is compared to what the satellites see, and it puts it together so that satellites can help us to know a lot of what's going on without us being out there forever. And part of what's happening in all this, of course, this is a 7 million acre watershed you're looking at. And what we're looking at is a tracking of plant growth across 7 million acres, bigger than Vermont. And we're looking at evapotranspiration, the water that's either evaporating or being transpired by plants. And we're looking at the biomass in forests, on crops, in grasslands, and in shrubland. And that's all, of course, relative to management so that we have a learning system so that we control the research. We can ask the questions. This is not done through a couple researchers, and this is done through all of us as a community being co-principal investigators. I'll go fast through this because I know I'm getting short on time, but our feedback science obeys the laws of conservation of energy and mass, and that's what gives us the ability to claim that what we're doing is quantitative. If that's an interesting thing with the prediction science that we're surrounded by today, is that the statistics don't obey the conservation principles. The energy is neither created nor destroyed, for example. They just ignore that. And that is really not excusable in today's, when science has been around for as long as it has, and we have all the tools and measurements and ability to put all this together. So statistics don't obey the conservation principles, but we do in, quote, our science. So next point in healing the land community. It's time to move on from failed paradigms, policies, economics, and overall human-made systems. For example, science, business, economics, learning systems. If these are failing us, then do we keep just flogging the horse harder, or do we do something else? Einstein called that insanity for good reason. Here's a study by David Pimentel, published this one. He did the first one in 2005, did this one in 2013. And what the point is look, soil loss is 10 times greater than soil formation. Like, that's where we're at in the most powerful nation state in history. So whatever we've been doing, we should make some adjustments. A big question, are we researched or are we the researchers? I reject being researched any longer. I have been part of too many instances where the researchers were unable to detect the changes that we were creating, did the management badly, did primitive, inapplicable science, and basically came up with findings that derailed global farmer-led research initiatives where we were just, calling each other, telling how things are going, and then all of a sudden, milk doesn't work. Keyline is baloney, all this stuff, and it derails our movements because authority has spoken. So our new paradigm for healing the land community is that we are the researchers. We are the principal investigators cooperatively. We're no longer just accepting that, oh, somebody's got a soil course, so now they're the experts. We're done. Do we control our data or do the aggregators? We control our data. Questions about a community determined future have to do with, will we be manipulated, atomized farms, holding on for dear life, economically speaking, signing up for corporate and government payment for ecosystem services programs, or are we going to be organized catchment contractors, healing whole watersheds with speed and competence? And we're going with the latter. I think it's really important if people get a chance to read this incredible book by Katerina Pistor. Watch her YouTube videos. Do anything you can to expose yourself to her knowledge. We need to understand this because right now we're in a time where we're seeing a lot of things like, hey, payment for ecosystem services. This is good news, right? They're going to pay us for taking care of the land. Is it really different? Is there continuity with old trajectory? For example, farmers getting 15 cents of the food dollar. Is this really a big change or is it part of the same tradition? According to Katerina's impeccable research, it's part of the same tradition. And that is that the law is used to turn the entire world into capital assets, which benefit the rich, but maintain power relations, for example, with us as producers on the land. With an effective legal coding, any object, claim, or idea can be turned into capital. That is an asset that keeps shedding money well into the future that's protected by the state. That's the role of the coding of capital. That's the role of law, is protecting the capital assets. This is very powerful stuff. She's a very sophisticated lawyer and it's a hard read, but I really recommend it. She's a Columbia law professor. Coding nature into capital began with the English aristocracy enclosing the land in the 1500s, taking something that had been thought of as involved. The land had use rights, but it wasn't something that you owned. That was a foreign concept. And it's an interesting way to look at our own consciousness because I think it's natural that Joe or me or Sue owns land. But that's a novel concept that's not more than about 500 years old. So coding everything into capital has been the name of this game. And I want to give you that actually this concepts of property that we have are the descendants of the legacy of the landed English aristocracy. And what they did is they enclosed the commons. In the 1500s, the commons, 80% of them, the common lands of England, were claimed by the aristocracy to be owned by them. And everyone's heard about enclosure. This was where it began. So after they enclosed, the land of England, then they privatized money creation with the Bank of England in 1694. And then they colonized the rest of the world and turned the land and the people that they kidnapped and enslaved into capital assets, things that they owned. So this all started with the land. So what's interesting too is when the English aristocracy were enclosing the commons of England, they claimed it was based on seniority. We've been here the longest. Now they show up in the colonies in the Americas, in New England, where we are now. And all of a sudden they needed to legally justify taking natives' land because it's a nation of laws, right? So they claimed it was because they couldn't use the seniority thing because the native people had been there at least 12,000 years longer than they had. So they started claiming, well, we discovered it and we improved it by cutting down the trees and plowing it. So discovery and improvement, interestingly, became the basis for intellectual property, but critically for gene patenting and seed patenting. So what Monsanto, the legal basis for Monsanto owning seeds and owning genes that they discovered and then modified is the same legal basis that was used by English colonists to justify their ownership of the land. Now this is carried on to data extraction. So this is, the tech giants that mine our data and effectively have created behavioral futures, being able to predict and manipulate our behavior and sell that to advertisers. That is legally has the same basis going all the way back to enclosing the commons or legally justifying taking native land. And it brings us through to ecosystem services, offsets, nature credits, natural asset companies. All of this have the same legal basis. Wetlands, biodiversity, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, water. Turning these aspects of nature into capital assets is a legal game that goes back all the way to the 1500s in England, led by the English aristocracy and still accruing wealth to the same class of people. As Vandana Shiva has noted, nature shrinks as capital grows. The growth of the market cannot solve the very crisis it creates. And we have incredible examples in the last few months where this, for example, Intrinsic Exchange Group has created a new asset class in combination with the New York Stock Exchange, which is basically, and they're claiming $125 trillion in possible assets a year based on a $1 to $4 quadrillion natural capital base. And these are becoming a new asset class that will be traded publicly, invested, and make a fortune for the investor class. So here's a news release from September, and where the New York Stock Exchange and Intrinsic Exchange Group announced, hey, we're looking at a $125 trillion market. And this really goes all the way back to research by academics into what are the value of global ecosystem services. That happened here in Vermont, in fact. Anyway, it's a big deal, but it's the same tradition. And for us to think that this is a new chapter, that, oh, maybe farmers are going to get paid now for doing environmental good. It was a mistake I made to use the language and the lens of natural capital and ecosystem services. It's not worked out that way. Thinking that we could use it and harness it and do good with it, but it's not the case. It's controlled by the big banks and financiers, and it will keep benefiting them. Amazing books to read about all this. William Cronin's Changes in the Land and Nature's Metropolis, unbeatable. Absolutely read them. They're about how nature was turned into capital assets and how Chicago extracted the wealth of the American West, basically turned it into commodities of beef and wheat and timber and sold them, made them into money. Ages of American Capitalism by Jonathan Levy, incredible book. And a well-written and just eye-opening book is Oneness versus the 1% by Vandana Shiva. So I've got to ask ourselves, is 10 minutes, understanding nature through the lens of the economic system we live in today, where a handful of billionaires own as much wealth as, big, huge swaths of billions of human beings. Is this the right lens to understand nature? I'm going to offer no, it isn't. But that is exactly what we're doing with natural capital, nature-based solutions, ecosystem services. We're using primitive economic concepts to understand the grandeur and majesty and incredible complexity of nature. The bottom line is we don't get it. When we do that, it needs to be turned around. And the fathers of ecology, the Odoms, proposed emergy to do that. And it's an example of you turn it around. Any talk that is using economic concepts to describe nature, it's convenient. It's certainly convenient for the financiers and the speculators. So here we have payment for ecosystem services is a recent policy instrument with programs that exchange value for land management practices intended to provide or ensure ecosystem services. Wrong approach, in my reckoning. And it's borne out. You can read the primary documents on this. What are the documents that were created to enable all this? And we have, bigwigs at Goldman Sachs and leading global academics who have put together basically the blueprints and manuals for turning nature into assets, which ultimately are definitely going to benefit the speculators. We can say that for sure. Already happening. So then we ask ourselves about neighborly economics and recognize that the conqueror role is eventually self-defeating because it is implicit in such a role that the conqueror knows ex cathedra, just what makes the community clock tick and just what and who is valuable and what and who is worthless in community life. It always turns out that he knows neither. This is why his conquests eventually defeat themselves. One way that I read this, and I wanted to describe neighborly economics because I didn't hear about it before we started developing the notion of it, is this is about being neighborly to our close neighbors, but to neighbors around the world. People, okay, so they're on another continent or they're in Mexico instead of here. It's only geography separating us. Future generations, what about considering them as nearby neighbors? How would we treat them? It's kind of like the difference between how we behave as pedestrians on the sidewalk versus road rage prone drivers, and also our non-human neighbors like the insects. So here are a few examples of indigenous and peasant farmer groups who are absolutely standing up and have been for a decade or more to ecosystem services, natural capital, nature-based solutions, carbon offsets, etc. Here's Survival International saying, nature-based solutions won't solve the climate crisis. They'll make rich people richer. Here's the Indigenous Environmental Network calling on groups from around the world, calling on movements and organizations committed to climate, environmental, and social justice to sign statements unequivocally rejecting nature-based solutions and offset schemes. Here's Via Campesina, 182 organizations, 81 countries, 200 million peasants, standing in direct opposition to the commodification of nature, our territories of water, seeds, food, and human life. Absolutely rejecting payment for ecosystem services, and they're asking for our solidarity. I want to offer that I'm personally going to give it to them, and we have a decision now to make it. That we can't claim willful ignorance having seen this workshop, right? I mean, you obviously read the books and everything and read the statements and follow what these people are up to, but they are defending Mother Earth on behalf of us all. I want to stand with them and be neighborly in our economics. More carbon pricing. These people are standing up to carbon prices, carbon trading, carbon taxes, carbon offsets. They're false solutions. And deeply accomplished academics such as Richard Norgaard pointing out that what started as a humble metaphor of nature as a stock that provides a flow of services is insufficient for the difficulties we are in for the task ahead. Saying that ecosystem services were an eye-opening metaphor, now they're a complexity blinder. He basically points out saying that the ecosystem services approach is blinding us to the ecological, economic, and political complexities of the challenges we face. Now, I'm down to about 4 or 5 minutes, so I think I'm gonna have to go really fast, but I wanna state that, 4 minutes. Part of healing the land community is coming to a new understanding of money. And that is money really only available from private banks, which make about 97% of money, and government expenditure? Or is there a possibility that communities could create their own credit to finance existential needs that are pressing? Like, for example, when the Union needed to defeat the Confederates and they created greenbacks, they created money, they printed money to meet an existential need without debt, frankly. And that's a fascinating thought. The renowned economist John Kenneth Galbraith said that the process by which money is created is so simple that the mind is repelled. Because of that mind repellency, we probably need to be studying, not unlike our populist ancestors who in the late 1800s launched the most powerful social movement in American history and almost won, but were co-opted. And that was one in which farmers would have controlled credit in a lot of ways, money creation. So if banks are the only sources of money, which a lot of us seem to accept, or government expenditure, there's another possibility. And that is that if we create the credit and can create the value, if we land managers, us stewards, can heal the land, that's absolutely justified that we create the credit to hire our farmers to heal the land. So I'm down to my last couple slides here, but I want to re-emphasize the point I just made, that the alternative to commodifying all of nature into credits that will be bundled and then traded, speculated, bet upon as futures, etc., by investors, is that we hire land managers to heal the land. That is not a semantic difference. It's a profound difference. And we can launch it. Well, that's what we're doing. We're working on launching it with some pretty high-powered legal and other guidance along the way. And that is a totally different road. And there's a decision to be made. Are we going to go along with JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs advice that we should do lots of nature credits and carbon credits and trade them and swap? Because they love it. In fact, they were instrumental in creating it. Or are we going to hire our land managers to heal the land? So our land care cooperative is a community-owned and governed organization for healing the land community. It is a business. It's comprised of land stewards, community members, organizations and businesses, governments, workers, founders. And it has within it a data cooperative, our own learning system, and soon a catchment contracting company that will take on the task of healing whole watersheds, as you can see in the image there. Oh, there's the website. It's young, but if you want to stay in touch with what's going on and be on the front line, go sign up. www.landcarecoop.com, and we'll start keeping you up to date as things evolve, because we want to bring you in. We just had to start somewhere. I'll conclude by saying that the land community, healing the land community, is guided by vision, care, and love, enabled by feedback learning systems, cooperation, our science, and neighborly economics. And Josh Lucas once said that our vision is growing the deepest topsoil possible, measured not in inches, but in feet. We see real progress on this already, and the rainfall ends up in the soil where it is useful, not running off and dragging topsoil with it, or raging downstream, eroding banks and flooding neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Abe. I mean, we are at our time limit, but there are a few questions in Hoover that I think I can draw you back into, not now, but potentially you could go into Hoover and respond to those questions. But there are two things though that are kind of a theme of what people are asking for. So one, apparently people would really like a reading list from you. So you could do the Abe Collins reading list. That would be great as a resource. And then people really wanted to talk about some of that massive diversity that you were talking about, and like not like pastures and hay fields and hedgerows, like more on that. So if there is more material or resources that you have that we could share out. I mean, I don't know if you want to take just a few moments to say something about that, or if we want to follow up with that. Okay, go ahead.
Just on the massive diversity thing, it's game changing. Again, the lay farmers get their books because it's point by point how they did it. The English lay farmers. Newman Turner is the #1 readable, I would say, but I love next Friend Sykes. Friends, but like You're My Friend, and Sykes, Sykes, Humus and the Farmer, incredible. Now going to contemporary stuff, it's watch the Christine Jones videos that she did as seminars with green cover seed. Unbelievable. She gave 4 or 5 of them, and each one is just, I watched the process by which I adjusted to the thought of not needing legumes for nitrogen fixation. I mean, it's challenging stuff if you're stuck in an old paradigm, but it is mind-blowing. And she really breaks open the quorum signaling, and how plant diversity leads to microbial diversity, leads to nonlinear effects in the soils, absolutely exceeding all the rates and volumes of possibility that we thought of before. And I will share book. I don't know. Come over to my new place. I moved to Middlebury. Come over and let's just read. Just sit on the porch and read.
We could have the Abe Collins book club. There, see, there's like a whole other side business. But maybe I could get you to just share some those resources that you have on those slides, or if you send me the deck, I'll make them into a resource list. So thank you, Abe, very much for sharing your time, and we'll try to get the questions that are in Hoover answered and get back to folks there. And I just also want to draw your attention to the next session. So the next session is discussions on other states' policies that support regenerative agriculture. That starts at 2:30. We have friends from California and Vermont participating in that. So again, 2:30 back here. And thank you so much, Abe Collins.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.